I've spent a lot of time filming inside Dollar Tree, and every single time, I end up talking to whoever's working that day. Most of them are friendly, a little tired, and surprisingly honest once you get them off script. So a few weeks ago, I asked one simple question to an employee who's worked there for years, stocking shelves, watching customers, seeing what comes back returned and what never sells out. I asked her what she personally would never buy from her own store. I expected maybe one or two answers. Instead, she gave me a whole list, and some of the reasons genuinely surprised me. This isn't about trashing the store, because plenty of it is genuinely worth your money, and if you've watched my other videos, you know I say that a lot. This is about the handful of products where the dollar price tag hides a real trade-off, one that most shoppers never think twice about until it's too late. What made this conversation different from the usual small talk you have at checkout was how specific she was. She didn't just say, "Avoid electronics," or "Be careful with toys." She walked me through the actual mechanics of why certain items fail, what she's seen happen to customers who bought them, and what she personally buys instead when she needs the same thing. Stick around, because the last item on this list is the one she said customers complain about more than anything else in the entire store, and almost nobody realizes it until they get home. Number 1. Generic phone charging cables. At $1.25, it's tempting to grab 2 or 3 of these just to have backups scattered around the house, and on the surface, that seems like a smart, cheap solution. But according to her, these are one of the most returned items in the entire electronics aisle. The inner wiring on the cheapest cables is often too thin to handle fast charging speeds, so instead of charging your phone quickly, it trickles power in slowly, sometimes so slowly you'll unplug it in the morning and find your phone barely moved overnight. Worse, the connection point where the cable meets the plug is a common failure spot, and after a few weeks of normal use, some of these start fraying or losing connection entirely unless you hold the cord at a very specific angle. She said the store doesn't do anything wrong by selling them. They're marketed as basic charging cables, not premium fast charge cables, but customers often expect the same performance as the $15 cable they're used to, and that mismatch is where the disappointment comes from. If you do want a backup cable for emergencies, she suggested buying one and testing it for a week before buying multiples, rather than stocking up all at once. A cheap backup for a glove box or emergency bag is fine. Relying on it as your main daily charger is where people run into trouble. She also pointed out that the cable's outer coating tends to crack faster at the exact point where it bends most, right near the plug, so wrapping it loosely instead of tightly coiling it after each use can noticeably extend how long it lasts before that fraying starts. Up next is an item from the kitchen aisle that she said looks like a steal until you actually try to use it. Number 2. The basic kitchen knife sets. A 3 or 4-piece knife set for $1.25 sounds almost impossible to pass up, especially if you're setting up a first apartment or need something for quick use. But she was blunt about this one. The steel used in these knives is soft, which means the blade edge dulls extremely fast, sometimes within just a handful of uses. A dull knife might sound like a minor inconvenience, but in the kitchen it's actually more dangerous than a sharp one, because a dull blade requires more pressure to cut through food, and that extra pressure is exactly what causes slips and cuts. She said she's heard more than one customer mention a minor kitchen injury connected to blades like these, simply because they weren't performing the way a normal knife should. These aren't unsafe by design, they're just not built for regular cooking use, more for occasional light tasks like opening packaging or cutting soft fruit. If you cook daily, even a mid-range knife from a kitchen store will outperform this dramatically and actually be safer in daily use. Her suggestion was to use dollar store knives, only for very light, occasional tasks, and invest in at least one real kitchen knife for actual cooking, since that's the tool your hand relies on the most every single day. The next item is one that seems completely harmless until you look closer at what's actually inside the package. Number 3. The pre-packaged phone screen protectors. These look identical to the tempered glass protectors sold everywhere else. Same packaging style, same claims about scratch resistance, all for $1.25 instead of $8 or $10 at an electronics store. But she said the material inside most of these isn't real tempered glass at all. It's a much thinner plastic film that mimics the look and feel initially. The bubbling issue is the biggest complaint, tiny air pockets that form under the film within days, no matter how carefully you apply it, because the adhesive layer isn't engineered the same way as glass protectors. Some customers come back frustrated, thinking they applied it wrong, when really, the product itself just isn't designed to lay flat long term. It also offers noticeably less actual drop protection, since plastic film doesn't absorb and distribute impact the way glass does. She said if you're on a tight budget and just want basic scratch protection for a few weeks, it can technically work in a pinch, but if you're relying on it to protect your phone from a real drop, you're likely to be disappointed exactly when it matters most. For anyone with a newer or more expensive phone, spending a bit more elsewhere on real tempered glass is worth the peace of mind. Moving on to a seasonal item that comes up constantly around the holidays. Number 4. String lights and holiday light sets. These are one of the most popular seasonal purchases in the store, and at $1.50 for a set, it's easy to buy several boxes at once to decorate an entire house. But she specifically flagged the wiring quality as a concern, especially on sets meant for extended outdoor use. The insulation on the wires is thinner than name-brand holiday lights, which means it holds up less well against repeated exposure to cold, rain, and temperature swings over an entire season. A small percentage of these sets can develop exposed wiring or flickering connections after just one season outdoors, which isn't just annoying, it's a genuine fire and shock risk if left plugged in unattended for hours at a time, which is exactly how most people use string lights. She said the sets are fine for short-term or one-time indoor decorating, a party, a single event, a temporary display, but she personally avoids using the cheapest options for anything left outside for weeks at a time. Her tip was simple: if you do use them outdoors, always check the full length of the cord for any visible damage before each use, and never leave them plugged in overnight, unattended, regardless of which brand you buy. For indoor use for a birthday party or a single festive evening, they're a genuinely good deal and safe enough for occasional use. She mentioned that even indoors, it's worth unplugging any string lights before leaving the house for an extended period, simply because a cheaper cord means a slightly higher chance of an unnoticed short building up heat over several hours. The next item is one most people don't think twice about until they realize why the price is so low. Number 5. The generic sunglasses. On a hot day, a $1.25 pair of sunglasses feels like the easiest impulse buy in the store. Stylish enough, cheap enough, that losing them doesn't matter. But she said the UV protection claim printed on some of these is inconsistent, meaning the lenses may darken your vision without actually blocking the harmful ultraviolet rays the way real sunglasses are required to. This matters more than people realize, because darker lenses without real UV protection can actually be worse for your eyes than wearing no sunglasses at all. Your pupils dilate in response to the reduced brightness, which means more unfiltered UV light can enter your eye than if you'd worn nothing at all. She wasn't saying every pair is unsafe, just that there's no reliable way to verify the protection level at this price point, the way there is with sunglasses that carry a proper UV 400 certification label. Her personal rule is to only wear the dollar store sunglasses for very brief, casual use, like walking quickly to the car, and to invest in a pair with verified UV protection for actual extended time outdoors, at the beach, driving long distances, or spending a full day outside. It's a small distinction that matters a lot more than the price tag suggests. Next is a personal care item that she said has the widest range of quality from batch to batch. Number 6. Teeth whitening strips. These show up seasonally and always sell fast because the price difference compared to name brand whitening strips is enormous, sometimes 10 times cheaper. But she said the peroxide concentration in these isn't always consistent, and unlike name brand versions that go through more rigorous formulation testing, some customers report uneven results, or in a few cases, temporary tooth sensitivity that's more noticeable than with pricier alternatives. This isn't a safety alarm so much as an expectations issue. If you use them expecting the same dramatic before and after results as professional strips, you're likely to be let down, and a small number of people may experience more sensitivity than they're used to. She said if you're someone with already sensitive teeth or gums, it's worth being cautious with the cheapest whitening products in general, regardless of where you buy them, since inconsistent formulation is a bigger risk with budget personal care items than with budget household goods. For someone just wanting a very mild, occasional touch-up before a specific event, they can be a reasonable low-stakes trial. But for consistent, noticeable whitening over time, she'd rather see people save up for a version with more consistent quality control. The next item is one that seems perfectly harmless for kids until you read the fine print. Number 7. Certain small toy sets in the kids aisle. Not all of them, she was clear about that, but specifically the ones with lots of tiny detachable pieces marketed toward younger children. The paint and material quality on some of these has been inconsistent enough that she personally avoids buying them for nieces and nephews under a certain age. It's less about any single incident and more about the accumulation of small red flags, pieces that detach more easily than they should, paint that can chip with normal handling, packaging that doesn't always clearly display an accurate age recommendation. For older kids past the small parts choking risk age, plenty of the toys are genuinely fine for occasional play and don't raise the same concerns. Her personal rule, and one shared by other parents she's talked to at the register, is to always check the age label carefully, avoid anything with very small detachable pieces for kids under 3, and do a quick physical check of the toy in-store, gently tugging at any small attached pieces before buying for a younger child. It's a small extra step that takes a few seconds but avoids most of the actual risk. For older kids, arts and crafts supplies, coloring books, and larger toys in this aisle remain some of the best genuine value in the entire store. Up next is an item that surprised even me when she explained the reasoning. Number 8. The disposable batteries. At $1.25 for a multi-pack, these seem like an obvious stock-up item for remote controls, flashlights, and kids' toys. But she flagged a specific issue. These lower-cost batteries have a noticeably higher chance of leaking if left unused in a device for an extended period, more so than name-brand alkaline batteries. That leaking residue isn't just messy. It can actually damage the electronics inside whatever device they're sitting in, sometimes permanently. For devices you use constantly, like a TV remote you pick up daily, this risk is fairly low because the batteries get cycled through regularly. But for things like emergency flashlights, smoke detectors, or seasonal decorations that sit untouched for months at a time, that's exactly the scenario where a leak is most likely to cause real damage. Her advice was simple and practical. Use the dollar store batteries for everyday, frequently used devices where you'll notice a problem quickly, but stick with a more reliable brand for anything safety-related that needs to work instantly and sits unused for long stretches, like smoke detectors or emergency kits. It's a small distinction, but it's exactly the kind of detail that only becomes obvious after you've seen enough of both scenarios play out. The next item is one she said gets returned constantly, almost every week. Number 9. Plastic storage containers with snap-on lids. These are marketed as an easy, affordable way to organize a kitchen or pantry, and the price is genuinely appealing compared to name-brand storage systems. But the issue, according to her, isn't the container itself, it's the lids. Across different batches and shipments, the lid sizing isn't always perfectly consistent, which means some lids fit snugly while others sit slightly loose or don't seal completely airtight. For dry goods like pasta or rice, a slightly loose seal isn't a big deal. But for anything liquid or anything you're trying to keep fresh longer, a bad seal defeats the entire purpose of buying storage containers in the first place. She said the return rate on these specifically comes from customers discovering a leak or a stale product days after storing something and not realizing the lid wasn't creating a full seal. Her tip, which sounds almost too simple, is to test every single lid in store before buying by pressing down firmly on all 4 sides and listening or feeling for any looseness, rather than assuming a matching size guarantees a matching fit. It takes an extra 30 seconds in the aisle, but avoids a genuinely common disappointment. For dry storage specifically, there's still a great value once you've confirmed the seal. She also mentioned that stacking these containers in a cabinet can put uneven pressure on the lids over time, especially if heavier containers sit directly on top of lighter ones. So organizing them by weight on the shelf, rather than randomly stacking, can help the lids keep their seal for longer. The next item is one that consistently confuses customers about what they're actually getting. Number 10. Off-brand cleaning sprays. On the surface, these look nearly identical to the name-brand versions sitting on shelves elsewhere. Same spray bottle format, similar labeling style, similar promises about disinfecting and cleaning power. But she said the concentration of active cleaning ingredients in some of these is noticeably lower, meaning you may need 2 or 3 sprays and more scrubbing to get the same result you'd get from one spray of a stronger formula. This isn't necessarily a quality failure, It's more a matter of dilution and cost cutting that isn't clearly communicated on the label. For light, everyday surface wiping, this is barely noticeable and honestly fine for most households. But if you're dealing with a genuinely dirty surface, tough grease, dried-on grime, mildew in a bathroom, expecting the same one-spray results as a premium cleaner can lead to real frustration. Her advice was to use the budget sprays for daily maintenance cleaning, wiping counters, quick touch-ups, general upkeep, but to keep one stronger, name brand cleaner on hand, specifically for deep cleaning days, rather than expecting one product to handle both jobs equally well. It's less about avoiding the product entirely and more about matching expectations to what it's actually capable of doing. And now, the item she said comes up in customer complaints more than anything else in the entire store. Number 11. Wireless earbuds. These are one of the newer additions to the electronics aisle, and at $1.25, they're an almost impossible price to compare to anything else on the market, where real wireless earbuds typically start around $20 at minimum. She was very direct about this one. The Bluetooth connection on these is inconsistent, sometimes cutting out during calls or music, and the battery life is noticeably shorter than what's printed on the packaging, often lasting only an hour or two of real use before needing a recharge. Sound quality is also significantly below what most people are used to, with almost no bass and a tinny, flat sound overall. She said customers regularly come back within a week, not angry, just confused about why the product isn't performing anywhere close to what actual wireless earbuds normally do. Her honest take was that this is one of the very few electronics items where the price gap between dollar store and mainstream retail reflects an actual, significant difference in core functionality, not just packaging or branding. If you need something for a single, specific low-stakes use, a backup pair for yard work where losing them won't matter, they can serve that narrow purpose. But if you're expecting daily use quality anywhere close to a normal pair of wireless earbuds, this is the one item on the entire list she'd tell you to skip and save up for something else instead. She added that even the charging case on these tends to have a weak magnetic seal, so the earbuds can shift loose and lose their charge just sitting in a bag, which compounds the short battery life problem even further. And finally, the last item, the one she said generates more return visits and confused questions than anything else in the building. Number 12. Extension cords and power strips. At $1.50, these look like a completely reasonable way to add extra outlets around the house, especially in a new apartment or dorm room. But she explained that the internal wire gauge in the cheapest extension cords is often too thin to safely handle higher wattage devices, things like space heaters, hair dryers, or multiple electronics plugged in at once. Overloading a thin cord doesn't always show obvious warning signs immediately. Sometimes it just gets warm to the touch, which people often ignore, not realizing that warmth is actually an early sign of a genuine fire risk building up inside the cord. She said this is the one category where she personally never buys the cheapest option available, specifically because the potential consequence of a failure is so much more serious than a phone cable not charging fast enough or a toy losing a small piece. Her rule is simple and worth remembering. For very light-duty use, charging a phone, powering a small lamp, a basic extension cord is fine. But for anything drawing real power, a space heater, a hair dryer, a full power strip running multiple devices, spend the extra few dollars on a properly rated cord from a hardware store instead. It's the one item on this entire list where the trade-off genuinely isn't worth it, no matter how good the price looks. She also recommended never running an extension cord under a rug or carpet, even a good quality one, since trapped heat with no airflow is one of the most common and most preventable causes of household electrical fires, regardless of where the cord was purchased. So that's the list. 12 items an actual Dollar Tree employee told me she personally avoids, or at least uses very differently than most customers expect. None of this means the store is a bad place to shop, and if you've seen my other videos, you know I genuinely believe there's a lot of real value hiding on these shelves. This is really about shopping with a little more information than most people walk in with, understanding which categories carry an actual trade-off behind that low price, and which ones are simply the same product for less money. Personally, I think the extension cords and the wireless earbuds are the two worth remembering most, since one is a genuine safety consideration and the other is just a case of expectations not matching reality. Everything else on this list can still work fine in the right situation, as long as you understand exactly what you're getting for a dollar. The next time you're walking the aisles, it's worth pausing for a second before grabbing the cheapest version of something you actually depend on every day, and asking yourself whether this is a spot where saving a few dollars is worth it, or a spot where it's smarter to spend a little more somewhere else. That's really the whole difference between shopping smart here and just shopping cheap, and now you know exactly where that line sits for 12 of the most commonly grabbed items in the entire store. I'll say this too, because it came up naturally while we were talking. She mentioned that almost every employee she's worked with over the years has their own version of this list, shaped by whatever they've personally seen go wrong or go right on the shelves they restock most often. That's really the value of asking someone who's actually behind the counter every day, rather than relying on assumptions based on price alone. A dollar isn't automatically a red flag, and it isn't automatically a guarantee either. It just means it's worth pausing for a second and asking what you're actually trading for that low price before it ends up in your cart.